All right, Josh, we are live back this week, and we got a guest.
Yes, and I'm so excited. For this week's live stream. Thank you, Tanya, for coming on. I'll let you introduce yourself here in a second. And so for those of you who just joined us, thanks for coming to the Good News Real Estate channel on YouTube, where we do our Thursday night weekly live streams. So before we get started, if you have any questions throughout this, make sure you leave them in the comments and we'll go ahead and bring them up.
Yeah, cool. Well, I will start with it here and get us started here. Today, topics we're covering, we got buyer demand. We got views on the current real estate housing market. We may have common ground, we may not. We're going to have some conversations and see where that goes. Updates on the forecast. We have some more layoffs you want to talk about, Josh, and we have some new market updates.
Awesome.
So, definitely. So before we get started with introductions, a lot of you voted on our polls we put up, and I kind of want to go over it real quick to kind of give everybody a preference of what we're going to be talking about here. The poll we put up last week was the Boise housing market. Will the Boise housing market be rising or falling in 2023? We've been talking about this frequently on our videos and our podcast. And a lot of you said, or 78% of you said it will fall, 7% will rise, and 15% of you said we don't know. So we're going to talk about that and go over that. We also had another poll as well saying, is it cheaper to rent or buy? Obviously, you guys saw our video and kind of broke all that down for you and gave the analytics and data on that. But increasingly, people are still saying that it's still cheaper to rent currently than buy in this market. So that's some numbers we'll go over as well. We do have a lot of questions from our last videos and our polls that we put out that we're going to go over, and I'm going to bring those up. And remember, this is always an open forum, so you can ask questions, ask whatever you want. I'll bring them up, and we can stop and answer those on the spot. Okay, viewpoints, introductions. Go for it, Josh.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm Josh. I'm the designated broker for Good News Realty Group. And as some of you guys know, I do believe that our market is continuing to fall. And I'm so grateful for our guest. She's going to share her viewpoint. We have a little bit different viewpoint, but I appreciate other different viewpoints. And today we're going to have a discussion about that. So make sure you put the questions you have in the market. And so I think, again, we don't have a crystal ball. So full disclosure, we don't have a crystal ball, but I do think that our market is going to continue to decline going through 2023. I don't know if it's going to go all the way to the end of 2023, if it's going to go into 2024, 2025, but that is my viewpoint. And I'm here to discuss my side of the things. So with that being said, I'm so excited. Tanya, you're real estate agent partner of AMHERST Madison here in the Valley. So go ahead.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, you guys. And I appreciate you allowing me as a newbie to, join the conversation. So everyone who's out there, hopefully you can be a little bit gracious. This is the first time I've ever done any kind of real podcast. So essentially, I got my start in 2010 in real estate. I was an assistant at that point. And I actually spent all day crunching numbers on foreclosures, bank-owned properties. Like, it was intense, just looking at all these short sales and REOs. So I kind of oddly fell in love with real estate that way. I ended up pulling back while I had my kids, and we ended up buying some land, buying a property that was pretty decently sized. We updated the house, split the land, built a home on it. And when I ended up entering the real estate market, it was nuts, as a fully licensed agent. So, my viewpoint is that we're on the path to returning to a more normal market. I think that we're going to get to a place where it's neither buyers nor sellers that are highly favored. Right now, buyers are highly favored. In 2020, it really was the sellers. So, my viewpoint isn't that we're going to see skyrocketing increases in values or crazy 2021 sort of debacle. But I do think that, we're not going to, have a full-on crash where everybody is upside down in their mortgages and flooded with foreclosures.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to brag a little bit. So Tanya, what I appreciate about you is not only are you a real estate agent, but you invested in it, right? You talked about how you bought a piece of property, you divided it, you I hope I can say this. You made money, right? Yeah. You did it right, and so I appreciate that. You have integrity. That you're not just somebody who's selling real estate, but you're also practicing what you're preaching. So just want to say that I appreciate that about you, Tanya.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some questions that we put out there. We have questions that we're going to go over. So let's go ahead and I think we can jump right into it.
We do. I'll go into them. All right. Our first question is from Don S. is from YouTube. Do you think the migration to Idaho will continue? Is this what their prognosis is based on? Because I believe most of the migration was due to the pandemic. Also, another element is big cities are pressuring companies to require to come back to the office, which is a portion of the migration was dependent on working remote. What's your guys' response to that? Or what are you guys seeing?
Do you want to go first? Or you want me to take it over?
No, go for it.
Okay, so I think something that we've seen that we've helped or we've potentially helped is some people are moving back. We've seen people that are selling homes even for a loss just to move back to where they're going. Now that's not a huge flood of people, but we are seeing a handful of people that are doing that. As far as a massive wave, I don't know. Right now, when we look at the Realtor Stats, I see it more evenly balanced, right? We're not having a huge influx of people and we're not having a huge exodus of people. So there's kind of more of a balanced, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. I don't know.
I think last time we checked, it was about a 50-50 split.
It was close to
Inbound,
50-50,
outbound, right?
depending on which moving company we looked at. But then Redfin, that has a tracker, I think it said there's about 3,000 people moving, more people looking to move to Boise or into Idaho than they were to looking out.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll go ahead and let Tanya answer that one.
Tanya.
Yeah. So what I would say is based on some of the numbers, and I think you've got this in a slide, is that last year we had 1.9% of our population, and we have a modest population, but nonetheless we had 1.9%, which was right around 38,000 people moved to Idaho. So obviously that demographic is going to be a little bit different depending on where you're at. But overall, I think Idaho in particular, and then of course the Boise area, because we are really kind of the only metro spot in the state, I think that we really are, we're still pulling people in. I think we're business friendly. I think that's huge. I think people are tired of some of the politics on the coast. I know I get a lot of people who I ask, hey, either why did you move here or why do you want to move here? The cost of living in general is low. And I know for all of us who are native, it's hard because the cost of living has gone up, in particular housing. So it doesn't necessarily seem like that. But when you take it from a bigger picture, a national picture, our quality of life, our cost of living, our property taxes, our cost of good taxes, all of those things are really in line to continue to keep drawing people here. So I think by and large, we're going to continue seeing it happen. Obviously, that huge influx of people during the pandemic, we're probably not going to see that amount of people. Right. But, I really don't anticipate people just to leave than are coming. I think we're going to continue to see people moving here.
Right. Yeah. I would agree that that there are people still moving here. I mean, we have a handful of people that we're working with now that are moving here. So don't hate me, people who are Idaho natives. Sorry.
I know.
But I just, but I do agree at the same time, or I would say too, at the same time, we have people that are leaving. So
Right.
Obviously not a huge flux. And what drove the huge prices in the pandemic, low inventory and all that, was the giant migration. And so, yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see if that's going to kind of turn a little bit.
I just have 2 cents on that. Really short, I have to make sure that in order for people to still come here, we still have to have obviously a thriving economy and people to have an income. And if we're relying just on retirees or people coming from out of state that have cash to come in, I think it's going to cause some of an issue in the upcoming future, in my opinion, if we don't have enough infrastructure and enough businesses to provide that kind of income. Yeah. Just my 2 cents on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else, guys?
I think that's it for right now.
Go to the next question. Yeah. From Brian, another one from YouTube. How can the median household income in the Boise area keep up with high median housing costs? It doesn't appear sustainable without the economy growing rapidly. So exactly my point, but I'll let you guys jump in there.
Yeah. So that's kind of been our argument, is the median household income does not match the median household costs here in the Valley. I mean, it's coming down and it's come down quite a bit, but I don't think we're there yet. I think we have a lot more to go. Now with people using the seller concessions to buy down the interest rate, it definitely helps that person in that time to be able to buy, and make it more affordable. But there's still so much last time I looked, almost half of our vacant inventory was over 500,000. And when we get into it, we'll see that slide that kind of compares what the median household sold prices versus like the payment and the interest rate that we're dealing with. And I think a lot of people were banking that we're going to see interest rates fall, but we've also seen that, after this week, the 10-year treasury rose. And so we've seen interest rates rise. We were negotiating on a house for a client, and the listing agent's like, man, these dang interest rates, they just rose again. Like, people were just now starting to get off the fence, and now they rise again, and now people are going to get scared. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think very fair question. And I think, honestly, there's probably a lot that we're going to agree on, potentially more that we agree on than we disagree on. Yeah, you know what? It can't, right? So the median household, what they make in Ada County can't sustain, a $5,000 house right now. I mean, that's the truth. You really have to be looking at probably under 400, probably 350,000 is what I would say. The average household, median income. That of course depends on the size of the household. Although I will say, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but for me in my business, I've noticed that there are families that are moving in together, brothers and sisters, grandparents with kids, and moms and dads with their kids. So I think that we're also sort of seeing a little bit of a mentality shift that may help still support higher prices, because people are more willing to say, hey, let's just buy a bigger house and we'll buy it together. And people are renting out rooms. They're also they're building an ADU, or maybe have something with an ADU, and they're renting that out in order to make up that difference. So I think people are really creative, and I've seen that myself in my business with a lot of my own clientele. But no, there has to be something. There's a gap there, and that has to be filled. But I don't know that that's going to be filled by fluctuating prices. I think it's probably a philanthropic need that needs to be dealt with in that way.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too that we have to keep in mind is like our economy, like the state of our economy. So a lot of people are like nationwide, right? Technically we're in a recession. But here, our local market, there's a lot of new construction jobs. Micron came out and said that they're laying off an additional 5%. So that's a total of 10% of their employees here in Boise are now going to be laid off. Last week, we talked about how St. Luke's is going to lay off, I believe it was 2%, if I recall correctly. So we see that our economy even here is kind of dwindling. And as builders pull back and stop putting sticks in the ground, going vertical, then we're also going to start seeing that that side of the economy get hurt too. So I think with those kind of things hurting, it's going to only help bring prices down, which is, and I say help, I don't mean to lightly look at people who are struggling.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So,
yeah, my 2 cents on that is one I always revert back to. I think cost of living is out of control. Inflation's out of control. And you bring up the point, people moving together. I mean, a lot of people are doing that to be able to purchase a home, but sometimes I think it's kind of a detriment for some people, because they're being, we all love our family, but they're being forced to move in together and own this piece of property all together combined, and they can't really have that freedom that some of them may want. I'm not saying we don't want to live with our families, but I think they're being forced to that because of the cost of living, inflation. I mean, things are just insanely out of control for most middle-class families. I mean, I know we have some comments coming up. They're tired of people talking about everything over 500, 600, 700,000, because typically I think some of those buyers can afford that extra burden of that cost, but a lot of these families that can't, that's why it's leading to these people moving together and the property.
Well, yeah. And I think it's a mix, right? I think you have those that want to be like a multifamily, and I'm just speaking for myself from what I see. I think some people that I see want multifamily, generational, like living. And then some people are just doing that. Like we have a client, they're doing that until the right property comes on the market. So they're living together with family until the right property comes on the market. And it's a way that they don't have to have a rent payment. They don't have to worry about breaking a lease. They can just kind of wait and shop. So definitely see that.
Yeah. Okay. You guys got any more on that?
I think the one thing that I would add is just that we are seeing inflation respond to what the Fed has done, right? So I do see positive movement long term. So inflation, historically high last year, which is why we got those three-quarter hike, right? I think was it May or June? It needed to happen. It probably should have happened sooner, right? Where the Fed stepped in and said, okay, we're going to make some adjustments here. A 9% inflation is just not acceptable. It's not tenable. It has to be dealt with. And so I think now, like, we're seeing that that we're seeing our economy respond to that. And you're right, like, recession happens, and I think we've all been sort of experiencing that to some degree. And the question is whether or not it's a hard recession or a soft recession, right? And so I think that really has to do with, okay, number of jobs that are lost, because while we are seeing some of these sort of white collar professionals losing, there's still a ton of employment signs out there saying hiring, hiring, hiring. So, it's, to me, I'm thinking, okay, as we're seeing inflation start to respond, I mean, maybe investors and businesses are going to start hiring in those white collar again in our area. And, Micron's going to be doing a $15 billion bill.
The chip plant.
Right. So it's like people are still essentially long-term betting on our area.
Yeah. And I think long-term, I definitely say that Boise's a great place to live. 100% I agree with that. But I think short-term, you just got to be a little bit more careful on what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Thanks, Tanya.
100%. All right. Next slide. Another one from YouTube from Spruce 1978. This one's kind of lengthy, so I'll read it out here. It says, I want real numbers for the middle class. I'm tired of seeing agents tell the world that the market is great. I think I speak for 99% of the people. We don't care about homes over 500K. Cost of living is crushing. Most people above that range can afford the extra cost. Inflation is crushing families. Income is not keeping up with the middle class. Cost. Inflation is crushing families. Income is not keeping up with the middle class. Families to actually comfortably afford to buy a home. There we go. It's horrible. Prove me wrong. 1, I'm just way poor this year. Or 2, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I have owned 3 homes. This market's not healthy. It's absolutely disgusting. Thanks. So you guys can react to that however you like. So go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I'll actually let Tanya hit this first. Because I think the question that we have to answer is the market healthy right now? And I'd say it's not healthy. I think it's on its way of getting healthy. Like, I think there's a lot of fat getting trimmed off. We had a very good conversation with a friend today where they talked about their mortgage company had to lay off a bunch of processors. And so I think, and I'm not saying layoffs, like I want to feel for those people who are getting laid off. Like, I don't want to overlook that, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of fat that's getting laid off. So it's not healthy. I don't think it's healthy, but I think we're working towards getting healthy.
I think I would agree with saying we're not in a healthy market right now. I think in general, where you have, I look toward a stabilized market, right? That's what I feel like is healthy, is when we have a stabilized market, when the prices are dependable, when, back in 2020, 2021, beginning of 2022, it's sort of like, okay, add, 10,000, 30,000, 50,000 on top of the price. Don't think you're going to get it for that price. And you're going to waive important things with inspection. You're going to waive appraisal. So that's not healthy. And we all knew that wasn't sustainable. You can't grow at 20% year over year. You can't grow at 40% year over year. Right. So my encouragement to this, and, it sounds like this person is really hurting, honestly. And, I'm sorry for how this has affected you. My encouragement is that we're now sort of, I think we're on the pendulum swing back toward normalcy, where, if a house is overpriced, great. Buyers have the ability to negotiate that. If it's well priced, great. Sellers are going to sell it for that price, right? So I think we're on our way there. What I will say, though, and hopefully this is something that's helpful to you, Spruce 1978 in particular, in Ada County right now, there are 299 homes available, single family. We're not talking townhomes and condos, single family, for under 500,000. So, that wasn't the case in 2022. We just didn't have homes for under 400. We didn't have very many for under 500. So now is the opportunity from a price point perspective, but then we're dealing with the really high interest rate, which is what's almost made a $400,000 home less affordable than a $550,000 home, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of get the sense of this comment is it's the closing costs, it's the interest rates, it's everything else. I mean, it's becoming unattainable for a lot of middle-class families to be able to get a property. Even if they're available, it's insanely overpriced.
Well, I think the inflation thing is definitely hurting. I mean, like my grocery, yes, I have 4 boys that never stop eating, but the grocery bill is rough. That's not easy. So I definitely think inflation's definitely hurting the middle class, and as well as, home prices continuing to.
One thing I say, the market's not healthy. I mean, 100% agree on that. I don't think it was healthy, pre-pandemic or during the pandemic. I don't think it's healthy now. Like you said, we're on this horrible, like this holding pattern right now where things are just so unknown. And I think you can kind of sense the frustration from this type of comment of what people are going through right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not an anomaly. A lot of people feel this way, and they voice their opinion on there. But,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, before we go on that next question, I think we should answer some of these that just came in.
I will pull them up. Let me see. First one, 20% drop this year. What do you guys think?
Oh, no way.
No?
I like the fingers crossed, though. I appreciate that. I hope that guy has money in the bank.
Yeah. I don't know. This one's tough because of affordability. Again, my biggest argument is the affordability, the cost it is to own a home. I think what we're seeing right now is, we have the seasonality of January comes and buyers are getting back in the market. But what I've also noticed is, which I think is very important that we talk about, is there. So we showed a house last Friday. There was tons of activity, lines out the door, but there's no offers. Today, there's still no offers on that house. And so although there's a lot more super boxes getting hit, there's a lot more people looking at houses. I think they get stopped when it comes to, oh man, I got to make that kind of payment on that house. Like I thought it was going to be a lot cheaper. So, so I think 20% drop would be nice. And is it impossible? I don't think it's impossible. I don't think a 20% drop is impossible if everything stays right. If the Fed continues to do their quarter basis point hikes, the bond market responds accordingly, and they increase, and the bond market goes up. I think that's going to be very easy to obtain if those things continue to happen. I think if all of a sudden we start pumping money in and the Fed cuts the interest rates, and then the bond market responds accordingly, then I think we may not see 20%, but I still think we have declines to come.
I think we will.
You think we're going to hit?
Trust me,
hit 20?
People called us crazy back when we were making our videos.
I know.
October,
we did call 30%.
We called
and
30.
we got 20.
I remember that. I remember that.
They called us crazy, and everybody
Yeah.
said, because we do this for a living. We are agents, so this is how we make our income. But we call it. So the reason I say yes is because I'm not necessarily if he's talking about sales price, median price, inventory. He says 20% drop this year, which I'm guessing in price. But I think the unknowns is social, economic, and political right now. So I think that controls absolutely everything. And what's going to happen if inflation continues to go up, cost of living goes up, income doesn't come up, prices will come down. That's what's going to happen. And that's kind of what we bring up with an increase of foreclosure rate, because people are not going to be able to afford their homes if we keep losing these jobs and the economy is not thriving like everybody thinks it is.
Well,
so
I got one more thing to say. So right now, the high end market has dropped some, but I think it has a lot more to drop. And once that high end market drops, which we're going to do a video on that next Tuesday, so make sure you watch out for that. But once that high end market starts dropping even lower, then that's going to push these other homes that are sitting right at 450, 500, 400 to start going down more, because if they're looking at like, okay, this is a used house versus a really nice house, and I'm only going to spend $50,000 more, they're going to go with the really nice house. And so I think we have to wait for the upper market. Now we've seen some homes that have dropped 800,000, 400,000 in the higher end homes. But I think once those continue to drop, then that's going to push the rest of the market down. But we got to wait for that upper.
definitely.
Tanya, go ahead. You respond to that.
Yeah, just to jump in there, I think there's a lot of assumptions, right? So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're making assumptions on what will happen, right? So
hold on, Tanya. When we hope you had your crystal ball in front of you.
I know.
Mine broke, and I was hoping.
I wish I did too. And I think that's one of the things that I want to remind people.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we're totally here. We're in. We're paying attention to what's going on. It's our job, right? Like what you said. We're realtors. If we're not paying attention to the market, what are we doing? What I'll say is the unemployment is going to have to shoot up substantially for us to be able to, for foreclosures to start hitting the market. And frankly, the way things happened in, 2008 to 2010, a lot of banks, they just deal with things differently now. They give you an opportunity to modify. I mean, one of the things that I do in working with investors is I'll comb through foreclosures. So the foreclosure lists now compared to what they were even pre-pandemic are tiny, right? And part of that is because they introduced different types of legislation. It was zero for a long time. I'm sure you guys are, know that that's the case as well. And so, I mean, I saw people who were in and out of foreclosure for 11 years, and they were still getting their loan modification over and over and over again. Excuse me. It's incredibly expensive for banks to foreclose. They're not in the business of selling homes. They're not in the business of kicking people out. They're in the business of making money off of the loans that they give. So they want to keep that going, right? So, I mean, frankly, I think it's pretty difficult for someone to go into foreclosure these days and actually go all the way through, sold, etc. Right now, and I just looked this up to make sure I've got current numbers. So from a national perspective, we're at 3.4% of the unemployment rate. In Idaho, we're at 2.9%, right? So during the Great Recession, we were, I think, what was it, 10, 11, 12%. So I think with that lens, when we're talking about, okay, what's unemployment? What is it going to take to really bring house values down? It's going to take a flood of homes on the market, because there's that sweet spot, right? There's always sort of that apex somewhere where prices are low enough that people are going to start buying, even if rates are high enough. And I think, you know, rates typically will respond to inflation, right? Because if you've got inflation, it's riskier for investors to give out loans. Excuse me. So with that, I think once we hit May, because that's when we saw, you know, that huge increase, we're going to have a year over year net loss in inflation, not net increase. So if that happens, that's going to be great for rates. And if that's great for rates, and I'm not talking like 3.5%, you know, I'm talking about dropping to like, you know, mid fives. People are going to go, okay, yeah, no, I'm interested in buying. And, you know, I think there's this shock that's happened, because when you come off of the back of historically low interest rate at 2.75%, 2.5%, nobody wants to buy at even 4%, right? But then when you swing all the way up and you're at 6.5 to 7%, even more. So I think that shock of coming off of that, plus what I think is likely to be some drops in 30-year mortgage interest rates, I think we're gonna see prices stabilized because of that, you know, in that late spring, early summer.
Yeah. So, I a little bit disagree with you on this. And the only reason why is because our inflation, the CPI report that just came out, it dropped, but it didn't drop as high, or sorry, as low as they were hoping, which in return created the bond market to go up, because they thought it was going to drop a lot more. Excuse me. And so I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see the 5.5, 5, because, you know, the very first part of the inflation drop, that's, you know, we went from a high to now 6, but I think that 6 and 5, we're going to be kind of sticky. It's going to be kind of stuck there. That's just my opinion. Obviously, you know, we won't know until it comes.
Right.
But I think the other thing to consider when we're talking about foreclosures and stuff, because everybody talks about the lending and how the lending's tighter, that is true. But here in Idaho, and you know, which has been a great program, so I'm not knocking this program.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah. People could buy a house with 99.5% financing. People could buy it with 100% financing in an RD loan. And so we have people that are 100% leverage, and if they lose their job, if they come into hardship, then they don't have, like, with the equity being wiped out. And that's one thing that we've been just preaching, is the equity that's been wiped out over the last year is substantial. And so those people who bought 99.5% financing, or refinanced up, you know, as high as they could, or pulled out a HELOC and used all that. So these are the people that I think are at risk of getting a foreclose on it. You know, these ones that are highly leveraged, because we don't talk about it. But then on top of it, there's loan products out there right now, which some people have used. Some people I know have used them. I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm just saying that, you know, there's risk behind it. It's no income. It's a no income loan, where as long as the property cash flows, you can get the loan to buy it. And so the problem is, we have seen rents come down. We've seen vacancies in rents and go up. And so with all of that, you know, that's just like to me, it's a pot getting ready to just boil over. Now, obviously, if we see stimulus, if we see, you know, rate cuts, all that kind of stuff, then I think, you know, all that stuff is going to go away. But there's a lot of that going on.
Right. Well, I think you make a really valid point. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. I just
want to speak to, I mean, on that. You're talking about employment. I agree with you right there. I know the unemployment's record low, but my fear is, like we were talking about, is cost of living, inflation, and people not having that income to support what they just purchased. And when it catches up with them, what happens with the cost of things, or if something happens, it's insane. I mean, the amount of people I talk to are on the borderline of bankruptcy or have insane amount of credit card debt or took all these loans out during, the pandemic, have all this debt and they have this expensive house. There's got to be a breaking point. And that's my concern. I know we're kind of getting off subject of the 20% drop, but that's my concern.
Right?
Yeah, that's my concern, because I talk to a lot of people, and especially on YouTube, all over the place. I ask opinions, trying to be non-biased. I mean, talking, you have lower income, higher income purchasing, whatever's going on, but it seems like it's out now that it's a record credit card debt, record consumer debt, record federal debt. I just, there's got to be a breaking point somewhere. And I think a lot of people are experiencing when you're paying $9 for eggs and, $4 a gallon, it's going to catch up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
debt can only go so far.
Yeah.
But if you're the government, you can just print it. But with us normal people, so it's gonna be an issue.
You just swipe.
You
just swipe it.
But
all right, let's grab another question.
Cool. All right, Cindy, the number one thing is never buy a house based on emotions. Yeah. There's a reason God created us with the brain, not just a heart.
Yeah, that's good.
Pretty simple to the point. I think we agree on that. So
let's go to property review. Let's see what they say.
Yeah, property review. The main driver keeping the housing market alive appears to be the undersupply of housing stocks. That sounds like a question. I think he's talking about like BlackRock, such, right? Portfolios.
Are you talking about? Yeah, I guess that's a question. Are we talking about actual physical?
I think he's talking about. I think he's talking about physical inventory, because he's talking about the driving that's keeping the housing market alive. Is that there's not enough supply on the market, and I would agree with you, property review, but at the same time, our demand is down, and so we have to see a big change in our demand in order to see that inventory. I mean, last week we talked about how our inventory is up 140, 160% in Ada County year over year, and so if we're up 168% and that trend continues and we go into May and then we're even higher than we were last year, so I agree. Our housing supply is not what it was. It's not at record highs, but at the same time, our demand is extremely low. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think obviously the demand is lower because otherwise prices would have stayed higher, right? So you've got obviously pricing dropped because demand stopped ceasing to the degree that it was. I think we absolutely have an undersupply of homes, not just locally, but nationally. But the question is how much does that matter, right, when it comes to interest rates? Because I have people who would love to buy all day long. And this time last year they could have, but now they can't because of interest rates, right? So I have some, definitely have people who are more than happy to move forward, but they literally just can't do a $2,600 a month payment.
Right. That's conservative nowadays. So
right. I mean, depending on where you're at. Yeah. For me,
kind of rereading that, I think what he said is undersupply of housing starts, maybe. And if we're wrong, maybe you can re-comment and let us know. But on that. Okay, we get the next question here from Cindy. It is not the most popular place to move now. Nothing like it was. The hot state now is Tennessee. Well, yeah, I think she's responding to that when you started. People influx of people moving here. So you can go ahead and start and respond to that
if you want to. If you don't want to respond to it, we can jump to the next question or next comment.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think Idaho is the most popular place to move. I think it's probably Florida at the moment. Just from a numbers perspective, I think people like doing business there. I think it's a huge metro area where people, you can get all over the world in a short amount of time. A lot of big business people have relocated there from Texas, from California, a lot from California. So I'd probably say that Florida actually is, but I think Idaho is still on the top of the list for a lot of folks, especially if you're in the Pacific Northwest. We're a pretty special little cutout, I would say, of the nation. If you like Pacific Northwest, if you like, world-class kayaking, mountaineering, snowboarding, all of those things, you come here and you're there within, sometimes an hour. Right. So I think we're on the map, but I don't think we're number one.
I think we're number 11 now, correct? I think we're number 2.
I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
It depends on what numbers exactly you're looking at.
Yeah, no, what blog you're looking at, what blog of the day you're looking at. Yeah. But I would just, my 2 cents on that. I mean, Idaho there is a lot of people moving to Idaho. And I think the reason being Tennessee, Florida, Idaho, a lot of these more conservative states, there's just a lot less restrictions, in my opinion. People can come here, they can start a new life. It used to be a lower cost of living. I think it's catching up with pretty much everywhere in the nation now, thanks to inflation. But
So
I'm not leaving Idaho anytime soon.
yeah,
So.
me either.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Jump to plastic robot shoes.
Okay.
Um,
Good job, mother. How far do you think the prices would? Good job, mother. Is that somebody you guys know?
That's my son Oliver. Hi,
Oh,
buddy.
okay.
Awesome.
How far do you think
You're
prices
like,
will
how
drop?
did it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my son.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're going to drop more than another 5%, to be honest. I think year over year, I think and this is not going to be a popular statement, but I think year over year, when we hit January of next year, we're probably going to be net a few percentage points. Nothing really to write home about, but I don't think we're going to be negative by the end of the year.
Okay. That's good. That's good.
Josh, how do you feel about that?
Again, no crystal ball, guys. No crystal ball.
I know. Well, when we asked you to come on, we were hoping you had it, but
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
I know. I'm just kidding. So I think we're gonna see a drop because, in my opinion, I think housing market. Well, and even some of the stuff that we have, which I'm so sad we're not going to get all of these slides because this is good. But in one of the slides we talked about, it shows
Part two.
Part two. Yeah. Sorry, Tanya, you're gonna have to come back on here again.
This isn't as bad as I thought. I was real freaked out. So,
yeah. So Fannie and the MBA talked about how they thought the home sales were going to be lower than they were last year for 2023, and then they're going to rebound in 24. So if the home sales continue to drop in 2023, then I think in January, just because, like everything that we've seen, it kind of goes in waves. And so I think we might see another negative in January. But I think we're 6% year over year negative in January 2023 to 2022. So.
Yep, and this might be a controversial opinion too, but I think it's gonna. Like we talked about, I think it will drop 15 to 20% or more, and I think it's just a massive transformation, and I just think this is going to happen. And the reason I bring it is because I believe it's led by the Fed and policies that happen because people don't have control over it, and inflation and cost of living will crush people. Yeah, especially what happens with the job market. That's kind of what we follow. People have income, they can spend money, they can buy. They don't, they have serious problems. Yeah, going with that. And I kind of want to go to this question right here too. The bust is here. Hold on. Saw it in 2008. It will be worse. Denial didn't crash fast. The market needs. So just kind of alluding to all of our different opinions, but a lot of people have the sentiment that it's going to collapse. And I know you said you don't believe that it's going to collapse, Tanya, but a lot of people do. And it could be our audience, YouTube people who follow us, it can be skewed that way, but I just,
no, it's definitely, it's a viewpoint people hold, and it's not for no reason, right? I don't hold a perspective that somebody is out of their minds for thinking that at all. For me, the data doesn't clearly lead to that scenario, right? I do see that there's a possibility, but I think for that to happen, it would be such a catastrophic event that I think both the government, I just don't think that they're willing to go there again. And, the other thing is we've entered 2023, we've got elections coming in 2024. And, the current administration is going to want to get reelected. And if we go through this huge crash, there's no way, right? People would potentially be rioting in the streets, frankly, to go through this kind of a situation again. Yeah. So, I think there's too many things that the government and or, banks and big business would do to come step in. And I think that they're doing a good job so far. You're right. Inflation hasn't responded as quickly as everyone had hoped, but it is responding. And it needs to be much lower than it is. I think what do they go for? Like 2.2%?
Yeah, their target inflation is like 2%.
Yeah. Okay. So 2% target inflation. So there's a lot to go, right? There's a lot to go. And I just don't think we're going to end up losing that many jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, kind of bringing that up. Somebody just commented on here. So perfect timing. Yeah. So I don't know if this is somebody who works there or somebody knows, but you could let us know if you do. It says Micron and HP will fire a total of 12,000 people, average salary 77,000. Half will go into foreclosure. You're all under 45. So you see if you're all under 45, so you'll see a 40% drop. Just my experience. I'm 63.
Yeah.
So
I think though that's company-wide, company-wide numbers. I think here Micron is if they lay off 10%, they're floating around 720 employees. If they lay off 10% here, HP, I don't know how much of the local. I don't personally know. And yes, I am under 45. So
Thanks for noticing.
I just think, again, this just brings up my point that, I mean, a lot of people see this coming, which I kind of see it too. And especially, you know, with Meta, not Facebook, sorry. I mean, changing their position there, Amazon laying off HP. Like, I don't know if everybody's shifting or like waiting for something to happen, or they're seeing something that we don't see right now, but I feel we'll have a hard time. But I mean, of course, we'll pull through it. We always do, but that's where my data's coming from. So
we should Cindy Casey has been commenting so good. We need to grab a couple of her comments.
Okay. There's so many people that are already upside down and it's still falling.
Yeah.
The FOMO, fear of missing out people.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a good topic to bring up, the fear of missing out and kind of driving the market.
Yeah.
Or not. So
yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing, right? As soon as a home, like right now, I just saw a house on the bench, this for $325. Which if I said this 2 years ago, that'd be like, oh wow, that's a little expensive. But right now, it's listed at $325. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, which is a good deal in today's market. Now you're gonna have to put money into it and all that kind of stuff. And that property, I don't have a crystal ball, but I've been in the industry long enough. That's going to get bid up, right? So that is going to create a bidding war because people are afraid. Oh my gosh, I'm going to miss out on such a great deal, even though it may not be a great deal in a year. At least that's my position. I know that other people have different positions. So thanks for that, Cindy. What are your thoughts, Tanya?
Yeah, I think something to keep in mind is that real estate is a long-term investment, right? So it's never, I mean, there's a very minuscule amount of people who really make money, create equity within a matter of months or a couple of years. Traditionally, and I mean, real estate needs to be held long-term for you to see profits. Even the people who lost big and were upside down in 2008, 2010, they made money over the last couple of years, right? So not that I'm advocating for people to go upside down. Obviously, we need to make smart choices. But if you're spending $2,000 a month on rent and you're just sitting there waiting, you're potentially, 2 years later, you're out $48,000 and you're never getting that money coming back to you. So when you look at it from a long-term perspective, it makes sense to own, right? The idea is, can you afford it now? If you can't afford it, don't buy it or figure out a way to afford it, right? So sell your nice car and get a used car where you're spending $200 a month instead of $600 a month. I mean, the amount of people who spend their money like that is shocking to me, to be frank. Yeah. So maybe it's upside down for a couple of years. That might be true, but you're going to get that back and you'll gain equity long term. Really, real estate probably shouldn't be held for any less than 5 years. I mean, generally, when we're talking to first-time home buyers, we say, live in it for 3 to 5 years. Don't live in it less than 2 years because of the taxes, but we always say 3 to 5 years is a good amount of time. So I think we just have to remember that the craziness that happened in 2021, 2020, everybody's looking to gain equity in months. They're looking to gain equity in 2 years. And that's just not how real estate works. It's not how it should work, and it's not how it's going to work.
Right. Well, the way I kind of read this question too is, I don't know if they're considering people that moved here, the fear of missing out on Idaho when Idaho had such a boom, and people realizing that the income maybe is not the same it was in their markets they came from. And that's the way I kind of look at this too, is people are upside down because they can't make the income, and they may have overpaid for a house, and now that crushing debt's coming upon them. But just my 2 cents on there. I did want to jump into this slide.
Real quick, I got to make a plug because some people have mentioned that they haven't seen our video. We did a video about rent versus buy just on Tuesday. We released that. So if you haven't seen it, go back and check it out. But we talk about you having a 10-year plan. So if you're not planning on staying in a house 10 years, then you really need to consider buying a house because, in 08, it took about 10 years for the prices to come back up. And people who held on to their houses could sell it, make their profit, got their principal buy down. But if you're planning to be here for only a couple of years, then you really need to consider it. And we broke down and we analyzed. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you check that out because we've had some people say, man, we didn't even get notified of this. And they had to search for it. So that's my one commercial for today.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to jump to this right here. So this came from Facebook or Instagram. I'm not sure it came through Meta Business, but just a preface to you guys too. I'm not sure if they're represented by another agent or we have that client relation. So keep that in mind. I'll just read it real quick and I'll put you back up on there, Tanya. Looking forward to the lives from tonight. Statistics show that the inventory is up and prices keep dropping, but in a way it seems like it is still a seller's market. The home below, which I actually have a top here, was one that my wife and I seriously considered as a matter of 24 hours. It has an accepted offer, so we missed out on 190 square foot. Seemed like a good deal. with how new the house is. Another house we were looking at in Star was listed for 535 and it sold. And today its approximate value is listed at 505. So buyers are potentially upside down. My question for your visitor tonight would be, how could you encourage people like me on the sidelines to purchase if most people are going to upside down right out the gate? Does it make sense to wait for the downward trend a little longer because there's no real statistical sign that the prices dropped are stopping anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, so can you pull that question back up so I can make sure we refer back to it properly?
Yeah, sorry. You're just going to be covered there. Let me get that comment there. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. So Mason, so doesn't it make sense? It might make sense. I had a cash buyer back in October who was looking at buying. He sold in a different market, moved here. And, we had a conversation and we were looking, had a home under contract. There were some issues with it. So he walked away from it. And then ultimately he said, you know what, Tanya, I think prices are going to drop more than I'm comfortable with. So I'm going to pull back. And my answer to him was, okay, sounds great. I'm here when you're ready. Right. So every buyer has different goals and different needs in mind. So what I would do as a realtor, I say, tell me about your goals. Tell me about your needs, because it's not my job to make you buy a house. It's not my job to push you to buy a house if it's not right for you. What my job is to facilitate, to negotiate, to find homes, to give you information on the market to help you support the decision that's right for you and that makes sense for your family. So would I potentially encourage you to wait, Mason? Maybe. I might. Would I potentially encourage you to move forward with it? I might. It really depends on your particular situation. And for a lot of it, it comes down to, can you afford it? Right? I don't know your financial situation inside and out. So when we're having the discussion, and you're saying, well, this is what I want. And if you're telling me, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make these monthly payments, my encouragement to you is to not make an offer on that house, right? Because I don't want to come back a year from now and have to sell that house for you because you have to get rid of it, right? So how can I encourage, I may not encourage you to buy a house. It really just depends on the particular person's scenario. And that's what I think a good realtor does. We help you sift through the information. We help you make the decision that's right for you and your family. And that decision belongs to you. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to anyone but you.
Yeah, I think that's, I appreciate that answer, that you aren't encouraging one way or another. You listen to their situation and then you coach them according to their situation. So sorry to hear that you missed out on that, Mason. If you had a good real estate agent like one of us three on here, maybe, no, I'm just kidding, Mason.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, kind of. But anyways, and I think the other thing too is, there's a saying and that I've listened to. I don't know if I 100% follow it, but there is a saying where a guy that I invest with, he says, I don't make as much money because I buy a little too late. So he buys when it's coming back up, and he doesn't make and then he sells a little too late. So he buys when it's going up, and then he sells when it's starting to go down, or when he feels like it's starting to go down significantly. So he missed out on a couple of things. But this same guy that told me this advice is very wealthy, and so it's really worked for him. But I think at the same time, if there's a perfect house out there, and you have a 10-year plan, and you can't rent it for less than what you can buy it for, and your family needs a bigger space, then I don't know. But you definitely need to have a 10-year plan, in my opinion, if you're going to be buying right now.
So my two thoughts on this situation right here. I mean, obviously we don't know your situation. Like Tony said, I mean, it all depends.
And Mason, I should say, if you're an agent, I apologize.
Yeah.
You didn't
but obviously it's situation dependent. But when I look at a property like this, and I see, at least by his profile picture on there, that he has a family. Like, again, like the comment we had earlier, I hope it's not a situation where you're emotional about it, because if you look at the price, you look at the house looks nice. It looks, can't really see it. I think a little over 3,000 square feet, probably on a flag lot though, in my opinion. So if you have a growing family and you don't have an RV pad, or you don't have an extra space, or you need more room, I mean, these could be potential things you need to look out, for your 5-year plan. Because if you're wanting property and you would just want to downscale in the house a little bit, have more property, I mean, there's so many options out there. So I see a lot of people, I don't see a lot of people, but some people that, like that comment earlier, they buy based on emotion, even though we try and tell them what's going on. And then all of a sudden, a year later, 2 years, they're like, I need more room. I bought too small. I don't have any property. I can't stand being an HOA. I don't like these CC&Rs. But that's my thing. I mean, it sounds like that is what you want. Maybe it's not, but I just look at the long-term plan on that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that question, Mason.
Oh,
We appreciate
definitely.
it.
Yeah, it was a really good question.
Yeah. Well, Josh, we're 50 minutes into it. What do we want to do? You want to
Well, I think we have, don't we have one more question? If not, then we can jump up and answer Cindy Casey's, because she asked what we were talking about for the upper market.
Oh, yeah.
Right above it.
Yeah. What are you talking about the upper market?
So when I'm talking about the upper market, I'm talking about like $800,000 up right now. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So when we release that video on Tuesday, that's what we're going to be focusing on. Okay, what's going on in that higher end market, properties with land. I mean, right now, just so you know, Cindy, if you don't know this, we are seeing owner carries coming back. So we're seeing people that are more willing to do an owner carry because they'd rather get a higher price. And because not as many buyers can afford it, they're willing to carry the note. And so we're seeing some owner carries coming back into the market, and that has been increasing a little bit. But that's what I was meaning when I was talking about that upper market.
Yeah, definitely. Throw up a new comment here. Good to see you guys. Thank you all three for the good information. I'm holding out for interest rates to drop next year. Well, I think a lot of people are. So yeah, I think again that's hurting a lot of people, especially if prices don't come down fast enough. But yeah, we hope to see that as well.
Yeah. All right. Nah just gave us a good
question.
One.
If pronouncing that correctly, I'm not sure. You are losing even more money on rent when you buy a house now. Mortgage interest, rent is paid to the bank. Property taxes is rent to the government, and there is insurance and maintenance costs. So
yeah, you want to talk on that, or do you want me to go first, Tanya?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. So mortgage and we're talking about mortgage interest. I think you were talking about mortgage insurance. If I'm not, or are we talking about just interest?
He's talking about right now, if you buy, you're paying property tax, which is rent to the government.
Well, okay, I'm seeing it. I think I read it wrong to begin with. So, you're never going to get out of paying property taxes in the U.S. So you will always pay property taxes. When it comes to homeowners insurance, you probably should be having renters insurance, which is quite a bit cheaper, but nonetheless, you'll need it. If you own a home outright, you don't have to have insurance and you're not paying interest. Most people aren't going to go down that road, or at least not right away. So I think you're looking at, you're right, paying, maybe you're paying 6% interest. But if you're renting, you're literally paying 100% interest. I mean, you are never getting any of that money back. And maybe that's the right situation for you or for someone else. And if that's the case, go for it, do it. I'm not going to tell you to do something different if it's really what's right for you. Mm-hmm. But long term, it just makes sense to own for the vast majority of people. If you can do it, if it, financially makes sense for you, because you are going to get that money back. So I guess that's probably how I would respond to that.
How I would respond to that is just go watch that last video we did. I'm just kidding. No, because we broke this down, which I agree. I agree right now. So in my personal opinion, in some markets, some houses, it makes more sense to rent than buy right now because it's cheaper to rent. And I know you get the principal pay down, but we break that down. Like we take very comparable houses, break it down, and okay, this house is renting for this. But if you mortgage this is what your mortgage is going to be. This is how much is going to go to principal buy down. This is what you're going to, got to put aside for maintenance and insurance and all that fun stuff. So we break that down. So I would agree right now it's cheaper to rent in some markets and a handful of markets than it is to buy. But again, if that perfect house and you got a 10-year plan, I don't know, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's not. So I think Tanya, can you just share, we have a handful of new viewers. Can you just share again who you are, who you're with? If somebody has more questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'll kind of preface it. I think we're going to go to about an hour, so about 8 minutes. If you guys have questions, put them out. We literally have another hour worth of slideshows to go through. I think we're going to have a part 2. So yeah, I mean, we love the questions. This is what we thrive on, is to have the input from you guys and interact, because this is what we like to do. So, I mean, this is a lot of stuff we can go over later, but yeah, let's go ahead.
So just to kind of reiterate, Tanya's going to introduce again who she is, because there's a lot new. And if you have any questions while she's talking, just throw it on the comments and we'll get to it.
So my name is TanyaLRanger. I am a realtor and partner over at AMHERST Madison Real Estate Advisors. I have been in the real estate industry in various ways since 2010. My first was a real estate assistant. Following that up, I did my own real estate development and subdivision. you know, went in and got fully licensed. So, you know, I've sold homes to people that are 212,000. I've sold homes that are $1 million, right? So for me, you know, my client's the most important. And for any good realtor, that's the case, right? It's the house is secondary, the person is primary, right? So our job is to find you what works for you, not what works for us or what works for our pocketbook, right? So, you know, my clients they come first. They're number one. Making sure that I provide the best service possible with the best experience possible is incredibly important to me. I like to provide more value than I receive in monetary payment. And, you know, I'm so grateful for when I get to do that. You know, I would say, I don't know if I've sold a house to someone who I haven't truly become friends with. And for that, I'm super grateful.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the case for a lot of really good agents. It's kind of the same story.
Yeah, sure. So I got to make a couple more plugs. Tanya is a wicked stager, so she does have some wicked skills at staging. But I want to just thank you, Tanya, for coming on.
Yeah.
I know we have a little bit of different views, but that's what I love about this industry. You can have a different view than me. Some of the things we agree with, some of the things we don't. Me and Jonathan don't always agree on things, but we're still really good buds. And so I really appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to come out on here. We've asked a lot of people. We've got some YouTube people that are like totally opposite of what we believe in, but unfortunately they won't come on. So I appreciate that you're willing to come on here and actually stand behind what you're saying and bring the facts and not just kind of throw things out there. So thanks, Tanya. And you guys, will see you next Thursday.
Yeah, part 2, because we got a lot of information.
I don't know if we'll bring Tanya on next week because we have some other things we got to cover, but she will be back on here. And if you want her information, it's at the very beginning of the video.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you are watching and you're watching late, please leave comments because we will respond to them. We can throw them up in another video.
Yeah.
So
sounds good.
Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.
Guys.